Hello, everybody. This is Jimmy. You're reading with Jimmy, and we're analyzing Fyodor Dostoevsky's A Novel in Nine Letters. This is part two of a two-part analysis. We read the first three letters, and we left off analyzing the third letter from Peter to Ivan, still missing each other as they try to find each other in town. So this letter, number 4, is from Ivan to Peter, again, the third person, and then the first person narration here. This is the letter. My dear Sir Peter Ivanovich, I'm writing to you in your room. I'm not going to read the whole thing at your so Ivan is in Peter's house writing to him at his bureau. And before taking up the pen, I've been waiting for more than 2.5 hours. I don't know, maybe time is our most precious resource, but these guys spend it like it's, going out of style. Anyway. Allow me to tell you straight out, Peter Ivanovich, my frank opinion about this shabby incident. From your last letter, I gathered, blah, blah, blah. I stayed 5 hours there. No sign of you. I'm not going to be made a laughingstock. Excuse me, my dear sir. They try to stay very polite, but you can see there's something brewing here. I came to you this morning. You're not, deceitful. Oh, God only knows. And he's really angry. There's no sign of you at home. And I don't know what restrains me from telling you now the whole harsh truth. I will only say that I see you seem to be going back on your bargain regarding our agreement. There's the agreement again. We don't know what the agreement was, but he's accusing Peter of going back on his agreement. And now, reflecting on the whole, I can't but confess I'm absolutely astounded at the artful workings of your mind. I clearly see that you've been cherishing your, what? What is he doing? What's he cherishing here? Let's find out. Sorry. Friendly design for a long time. You've been planning this for a long time, as he thinks about it. This supposition is confirmed by last week. In an unpardonable way, you took possession of the letter of yours addressed to me in which you laid down yourself, though rather vaguely, the terms of our agreement in regard to a circumstance of which I need not remind you. So now suddenly we see Ivan accusing Peter of stealing the letter, some letter that has the terms of whatever agreement this is. I don't know when Peter would have stolen it. We don't know when. But according to Ivan, you almost unpardonably took possession of that letter in regard to the circumstance. You are afraid of documents. You destroy them, and you try to make a fool of me. Remember what I talked about in the last analysis about writing things down. Is this true? Is Ivan lying? Is Peter lying? They're first-person narrators? We don't know. We can only know we have to keep reading and try to draw our own conclusions, because the third-person narrator, unlike other stories we read, doesn't seem to be helping us too much. I won't allow myself to be made a fool of, for no one considered me hitherto, and everyone thought well of me in that respect. What does that mean? That he wasn't a fool, or that he was a fool? I'm opening my eyes. You try and put me off and confuse me with talk of Yevgeny Nikolaevich. And when your letter of the 7th of this month, there it is, ladies and gentlemen, write that down. The 7th of this month is going to be, as you'll see in the next letter, if you glance at it, November. So it's November 7th. And now you can backtrack, which we'll do before we finish our analysis, the dates of these letters, to get a better sense of what the heck is going on. I'm still at a loss to understand. I seek a personal explanation, and you make humbugging appointments. What's humbugging? Act like a fraud or a sham. You make excuses. You're humbugging. You make these fraudulent appointments, and you keep out of the way. You're avoiding me. Surely you don't suppose that I'm not noticing this. You promise, here we go. You promise to reward me for my services, of which you are well aware. Well, we're not, but he knows. He's saying Peter knows, in a way of introducing various persons. And at the same time, I don't know how you do it. You contrive to borrow money from me in a considerable sums without giving a receipt, as happened no longer than last week. Here we get to the gist of the matter. Here's the crux of the matter. Here's what we're talking about. So Ivan's services were introducing certain people. We can guess at what those are, but we can figure it out later, to Peter. And also, according to Ivan, borrowing money without a receipt, without taking a receipt, without giving a receipt. So he borrowed money to Peter, but he didn't get a receipt, unless the receipt was that letter that Peter took back. I don't know. We don't know yet. Remember, we're in the story gathering clues. We're detectives. So now, having got the money, you keep out of the way. So in other words, you don't want to give me my money back. Okay? You repudiate the service I have done to you in regard to Yevgeny. That's the person he introduced to. He introduced him to Peter. So it's not plural persons, it's Yevgeny. Now, why did he introduce him to Yevgeny? Well, I'm sorry, why did he use Yevgeny to Peter? I'm going to say it's, first of all, is because, Yevgeny's got money, right? If Peter borrowed money, whether a receipt or not, from Ivan, he looks like he may be, I'm not saying he is, but he may be a little con man. I don't know. You're probably reckoning on my speedy departure to Simbrisk. He's accusing Peter of thinking he's going to go out of town. Now, Simbrisk from St. Petersburg is about 6,000 miles. Russia's still is a big country, right? And hoping I might not have time to settle your business, but I am sure you, and I am prepared to spend 2 more months in Petersburg. And there's, ladies and gentlemen, even if you didn't know where that theater was, the play we were talking about in the first second letter, Petersburg. That's where this takes place, Petersburg. So Ivan's saying, I'm going to stay here 2 more months till I get my money back. That's what he's telling him. But he doesn't say to get my money back, to carry through my business, to attain my objects. Nobody talks in straight terms here. And, here we go. If you don't give me satisfactory explanation today, first in writing and then face to face, and you don't make a fresh statement in your letter of the chief points of the agreements, in other words, the money, and you don't explain fully your views in regard to Yevgeny, I'm compelled to have recourse to measures that will they're going to be highly unpleasant to you. And they're repugnant to me. But you're not going to like these measures that I have access to. So there's a threat. Settle with me, or something bad is going to happen. And it's repugnant to me too. Right? Got it? That's that letter. That's number 4. Number 5, before we go to the notes below. November 11th. Now we can start dating back now. Now Peter writes to him, my dear and honored friend, no precious anymore, but you're still honored. I was cut to the heart by your letter. I'm laughing. I don't know if you believe him. I don't believe this guy. I wonder you are not ashamed, my dear but unjust friend, to behave like this to one of your most devoted friends. Friend. Why be in such a hurry without explaining things fully? Wound me with such your insulting suspicions. But I hasten to reply to your charges. You didn't find me home yesterday, Ivan, he calls him by his name in here. It's because I was suddenly and quite unexpectedly called away to a deathbed. My aunt, Yevgenia Nikolovna, passed away yesterday. Remember the sick aunt? Passed away at 11 o'clock at night. She died. By general consent of the relatives, I was selected to make the arrangements for the sad and sorrowful ceremony. Blah, blah, blah. I had so much to do. I had not time to see you this morning. I couldn't even write to you. So it's a few days, right? I'm grieved to the heart at misunderstanding. I'm grieved. This is just a misunderstanding. My words about Yevgeny, uttered casually and in jest, you've taken in the wrong sense. What words were those? Remember? Tell this guy to get out of my house. I think. Not in those words. And you refer to money and express your anxiety about money. Without wasting words, I'm ready to satisfy all your claims. I've got no problem. Though I have to remind you that the 350 rubles I had from you last week were in accordance with a certain agreement and not by way of a loan. Aha! So now Peter says that 350 rubles, right? That's quite a sum of money. It was not a loan. No loan. It was an agreement. You gave me that money. Because if there was a loan, there would have been a receipt. Well, I think we know what happened here, right? Peter took the receipt back. So there's no evidence. I will not condescend to discuss the other points you mentioned in your letter. What other points? All these other points here. It's a misunderstanding. I see it as your habitual hastiness, hot temper, and obstinacy. You're just obstinate in your hot temper. And I know that your good-heartedness and open character will now not allow doubts to persist in your heart, and you'll in fact be first to hold out your hand to me. You are mistaken, Ivan. You are greatly mistaken. And although your letter has deeply wounded me, I should not be prepared even today to come to you. I'm prepared and apologize. But since yesterday, I've been in a rush and a flurry that I'm utterly exhausted. And to complete my trouble, my wife is laid up. I'm afraid she's seriously ill. And our little boy, thank God, is better, but I've got to lay down my pen. I've got a lot to do. Allow me, my dear friend, to remain, etc. So just a couple of notes. This is what is behind all this is his introduction of Yevgeny, right? 350 rubles he borrowed it, or he took it, or he gave it to him. You repudiate the service I have done you in regard. What does this mean? So who is this guy Yevgeny? Who is this guy Yevgeny? Who is he? I don't know. He doesn't show up to much except names about him. Letter number 6. This is the longest letter, 1,500 words. No, I'm not going to read every word. Read it yourself. Listen to Jimmy reading the full text if you want. Anyway, dear sir, so this is Ivan writing back to Peter, November 14th, right? This letter is November 11th. So 3 days have passed. So a few days have passed, and now Ivan takes his pen. Since my last letter, the 10th of the month, and you can start writing the dates of the letters, you'll get a sense of this. I've neither word nor deed reminded you of my existence, so you can bury your aunt. But I confess that in the first 2 letters, I thought you didn't understand me, and I thought it was me, the way I wrote. In other words, he's saying, well, okay, maybe you didn't understand what the hell I was talking about. But then he says a snake sometimes lies hidden under the flowers. In the treachery of your heart, you had planned beforehand to be faithless to your word of honor and to the friendly relations existing to us. So now Ivan's getting really serious. He's calling him a snake, treachery, and you have proved this absolutely by your bottom column, which is fatal to my interests. From the very beginning, you captivated me by your clever manners, subtlety of your behavior, your knowledge of the affairs and advantages that became by associating with you. And I imagine I had found a true friend and well-wisher. Maybe Ivan is naive. I don't know. But he says you hide venom You're like those people who hide venom in their hearts. You drug and bewitch the reason of those who have entered into business relations. So now here we go. The first place, in the distinct terms of my letter, the first letter you meant about this Yevgeny guy, you tried for the most part to avoid answering and confounding me by doubts and suspicions. So, I introduced you to this guy, but now you're making me doubt this. What are you talking about, right? You began writing that you were wounded. What am I supposed to call that? You're pretending personal relationships, intentionally avoiding all mention and talking about irrelevant things. So you're a good lady. I understand her. She's got a kid teething, and I'm going to be a devoted parent myself soon. But this is, blah, 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 blah. I endured everything in silence, except for the letters he wrote. But I'm not going to play the part of a fool or a laughingstock. And then he goes on here, right? He finds out that your aunt had a stroke on the day before the 7th, not long after midnight. So he's realizing that he's juggling the dates. Finally, in your last letter, you mentioned the death of your relatives, and I would have visited you, blah, 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 blah. I have found out that your aunt died 24 hours later than the time you fixed for her death. So Peter's making now. Do we believe Ivan? Well, he says he found that out. Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. I remember we had a very dear friend, was a client that passed away. And we had written the press release. I personally wrote the press release for announcing, his passing. But I wrote it ahead of time because, according to everybody, the doctors and everybody else, that he's not gonna pull out of this. He had a really severe. I don't want to say what it was, but it was bad. And of course, he did pass away. But what the company did is they issued the release before he died, and I was stunned. I was stunned at that. I don't know why they did that. Still today, I don't know why they did it. But in any case, truth is sometimes stranger than fiction. But in this case, this guy's lying maybe he's lying, who knows? Anyway, treachery or style, blah, blah, blah. I've come now to your principal act of deceit is your continual silence concerning our common interests, your wicked theft of the letter in which you stated, in language somewhat obscure and not perfectly intelligible to me, our mutual agreements. Forcible loan of 350 rubles. You borrowed from me as your partner. You borrowed it. And your abominable slanders of our common acquaintance, Yevgeny. You've slandered him. But so, like a billy goat, good for neither milk or wool. That's what you're saying about this guy. Please. I know Yevgeny as a modest and well-behaved young man. But I also know that every evening for the last fortnight, 2 weeks, you've put in your pockets dozens, sometimes hundreds of rubles, playing games of chance with Yevgeny. In other words, Peter's been taking Yevgeny to the cleaners and gambling. And so now you disavow all this, you refuse, blah, 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 right? So, okay. I should partner in blah, 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 blah. You want me to be a partner in this affair? You decline to compensate me, resorting for the object of calumny. What is calumny? The making of false and defamatory statements about someone in order to damage their reputation. You want to slander my buddy Yevgeny, with which you have unjustified blackened in the eyes of the man whom I and my efforts and emotions introduced into your house. I brought him into your house. Well, on the contrary, what I hear from your friends, you're still slobbering over him, right? Aiming at what your friendly, blah, 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 I should say, blah, blah, blah. Okay. In the end, if you do not, in the shortest possible time after receiving this letter, return to me in full 350 rubles, and all the sums that should come to me according to your promise. So apparently there's more money involved. We don't know how much. I will have recourse to every possible means to compel you to return it, even to open force. And second, to the protection of the laws. And finally, I beg to inform you that I am in possession of facts. I've got these facts, which if they remain in my hands, of your humble servant, that's me, right, Ivan, they may ruin and disgrace your name in the eyes of the world. More threats. So you better pay up, buddy. Letter number 7, from Peter to Ivan. Note the opening. There's no more precious going on here. Ivan, I receive your vulgar and queer letter. My impulse, remember, words mean different things in different times, right? A queer letter, my vulgar. My first impulse was to tear it up, but I didn't. So here's what he says. Peter says, Ivan, I must inform you that this is very unpleasant, and I don't want to see you in my house anymore. Oh, get out. Stay away from me. My wife sends the book, Don Quixote de la Mancha, with her sincere thanks. As for the galoshes you say you left behind, this is the first time, ladies and gentlemen, we've heard about some galoshes. You know what galoshes are, right? They're boots over your shoes. Russia is a very windy, cold place sometimes, Petersburg. Lots of snow. As for the galoshes you say you left behind in your last visit, I don't recall that. Do you recall that? To me, this may indicate to Jimmy that these guys talk outside these letters, that maybe there's some talking going on. I can't prove it. There is no proof except for what you just read, that somehow galoshes have been left behind in Peter's house. So I'm going to assume that there is talking besides these letters. Will you bear that with me? Even if you don't. Okay. I must regretfully inform you that they are nowhere to be found. Okay, but if they do not turn up, I'll buy you a new pair. I remain your sincere friend. Really? Okay, whatever. So letter number 8. Now, this is the third person narrator talking. This is very important. So on the 16th of November, which is the next day from November 15th, okay, on the 16th, Peter receives, so Ivan's sending this to Peter, 2 letters addressed to him. Opening the first envelope, he took out a carefully folded note on pale pink paper. The handwriting was his wife's, Anna's. It was addressed to Yevgeny, and it was dated November 2nd. Remember, I told you dates are very important. November 2nd is when this whole thing started. There was nothing else in that envelope. So Peter read, Dear Eugene, so that's Yevgeny. Yesterday was utterly impossible. My husband was at home the whole evening. Who's our husband? Peter, who's reading this. Be sure to come tomorrow punctually at 11. At 10:30, my husband is going to Tarsus and not coming back till evening. I was in a rage all night. Thank you for sending me the information and the correspondence. What a lot of paper. Did she really write all that? She has style, though. Many thanks, dear. I see that you love me. Don't be angry, but for goodness sake, come tomorrow. Something going on here. Who's she? Who is this? Who do you think this is? We'll talk about that in a minute. Peter tore open the other letter. He's tearing it open. Why is he tearing it open? Well, look what he just read. He read a letter from his wife to Yevgeny that, while the cat's away, the mice will play, right? Peter. So who's writing this, right? This is Peter Ivanovich. I should never have set foot in your house anyway. This is from Ivan, isn't it? You need not have trouble to soil paper. Next week, I'm going to Simbris. So he's going away to 6,000 miles. Yevgeny remains your precious and beloved friend. I wish you luck. And don't trouble about the galoshes. Okay. So go screw yourself. No, I'm just saying. Okay. On the 17th of November, which is the next day, right? That's the 17th of November. Ivan receives 2 letters addressed to him. In opening the first letter, he took out a hastily and carelessly written note. The handwriting was his wife's. Who's saying this to us? The third person narrator. So we have to believe him. It was addressed to Yevgeny, and it was dated August 4th. We're in November, so you got to go back to August, September, October, 3 months ago. 3 months ago. 3 months. There was nothing else in the envelope. Ivan read, "Goodbye, goodbye, Evgeny. The Lord reward you for this too. May you be happy. But my lot is bitter, terribly bitter. It's your choice. What's his choice? Leaving? If it had not been for my aunt, I should not have put such trust in you. Do not laugh at me, nor my aunt. Tomorrow is our wedding." Our wedding. Who's that? Oh, I think it's Ivan, right? "Aunt is relieved that a good man has been found, and that he will take me without a dowry." Without a dowry. I'm going to talk about that. I took a good look at him for the first time today. He seems good-natured. "They are hurrying me. Farewell, farewell, my darling. Think of me sometimes. I shall never forget you. Farewell. I signed this like my first letter to you. Do you remember? Tatiana." She has no dowry. She's marrying. They found a good man. Who is that good man? It's Ivan. What's a dowry? It's the property or money brought to a bride to her husband on their marriage. She has no dowry. What happened to the dowry? What happened to the dowry? The second letter was as follows. Ivan, you will receive a new pair of galoshes tomorrow. It's not my habit to filch from other men's pockets, and I am not fond of picking up all sorts of rubbish in the streets. Yevgeny is going to Simbirsk in a day or two on his grandfather's business, and he has asked me to find a traveling companion for him. Wouldn't you like to take him with you? Ouch! Ouch! What a story. What a story. Here's the dates here. I'm not going to belabor them. So November 7th, he writes Peter to Ivan, Ivan to Peter, etc. And it goes through the beginning of November to mid-November. But also August, this is dated August, right? August 4th. So 3 months before that is when that. So Yevgeny's, Ivan introduced Yevgeny to Peter. Why? Guess, right? He's got money. What was the business arrangement? 350 rubles. Can you understand motivation for each of these characters? That's an essay in itself. Both women love Yevgeny. So what is a cuckold? Have you heard the word? A cuckold is a man who's been betrayed by his wife. If your wife cuckolds you, she is cheating on you with a different man. And this is an old-fashioned way. You'll find it in many Shakespearean plays, though cuckolding is certainly older than Shakespeare and will always exist as long as there are marriages, says some Google guy, right? But the word itself comes from cuckoo bird and alluding to its habit of laying its eggs in other birds' nests. Did you know that? The association is common in medieval folklore literature, iconography, right? So in medieval times, you'll see this. They call it growing horns. So what do you make of this story, this very, very complex story? So you've got a lot of things below the surface. Below the surface that are happening. So Jimmy diagrammed it for you. Can we take a look at this for a minute? Let me look at this. Okay. So here's a little outline for you to figure out what okay. So the first letter comes from Peter to Ivan. Hey, I'm trying to find you. Can you drop a hint to this guy? Stay away from my house. Now, why do you think he's asking him in retrospect to stay away from his house? And if Peter knew that his wife was cheating with Yevgeny on him, and you were Peter, what would you do? Would you pop the guy? Well, I mean, I don't know if I would ask the guy who she's cheating with, the guy who introduced them to me, would you tell him to get out of my house? He says he can, you know me, I can't do that. Why can't he do that? Well, first of all, he's taking him to the cleaners when he's gambling, right? So the guy's playing him for a mark, but who's the mark? Who's the mark? There's a great question. In this story, who's the mark? Right? You saw the sting? They're always looking for the mark. The next letter, what are you talking about? Let's meet. I've been home all the time. So this is all BS, what Peter's telling Ivan in the first letter. He's running around town. All you have to do is go over and find him. But he doesn't want to confront him. Why? Because he doesn't want to give him back the 350 rubles. I'm generalizing. I'm suggesting to you, you don't have to believe me. Go back and read the story. I encourage you to go back, study the story, read it again and again if you have to. This is a complex story. Well, Jimmy, I don't have the time. Can't you just text me the answers? No. Life is not bullet points. Life is complex, complicated. Sometimes there's only a hint in a person's gesture, in the way they look, in the way, if you want, sometimes they just drop hints of what's really going on underneath the surface. So you have to be astute, right? My precious friend. Somebody calls you a precious friend, you immediately go on alert. My precious friend. I had an email the other day. I sent an email to a guy, acquaintance that we know. His wife's birthday was there. I said, please wish your wife a happy birthday from my wife to her. Wish her, please. And he returned that email and said it was very gracious. That's the wrong word. It's not gracious to wish a person a happy birthday. Words reveal things. What they reveal, only knows. Joseph Conrad, one of the great writers, and in fact, the only writer to write in a language other than his own. Did you know Joseph Conrad was Polish? And that he was a famous English author, wrote, in English. Very, very rare you can write in a different language and become famous. In fact, he's the only guy I know that ever did that. But he wrote one time that you don't know what can come up from the sea, the depths from the sea. A man is like the sea. You don't know what can come from the depths. So you don't know what's possible in people. You don't. You don't even know what you would do in certain situations. That's why it's important to read stories like this. Complex, short stories. And read carefully and understand the language. Well, Jimmy, nobody talks like this anymore. Look at what year is this, right? This is now. That's all BS. That's in the past. No, it's not. It is absolutely not. Look what's going on with that cryptocurrency case with that young kid. I forgot his name. You know what I'm talking about? I think his trial this week, or he's going to be sentenced. I think the government wants 40, 50 years, and his defense wants 6 years for cheating people. I mean, just taking them to the cleaners. Now, I don't know anything about cryptocurrency. I don't want to know about cryptocurrency, but I do know people. And all you have to do is listen to this guy talk once before he was arrested. And I guarantee you, if you fell for it, good luck. Then you should lose your money. But it was apparent to Jimmy. The guy's full of bull. It was bullshit. Plain and simple. I'm just telling you. So you have to, when you study literature like this, you actually dive in and go into people's minds and try to figure, because it's not easy. Third letter, he says, my wife was sick. I went to your place and I found Yevgeny there. Well, what's Yevgeny doing at Ivan's place? Well, you know what he's doing now. right? He knows Titania from the old days. He knows her. And now he's fooling around with Anna. Huh. You think maybe that Peter? No, I'm not even going to go there. Don't even go there. Ivan writes back, I'm writing to you from your house. He's in his house writing to him. You stole my letters. Give it back or else. 350 rubles wasn't a loan. My aunt died. You're gambling with Yevgeny and taking his money, you bastard. The 350 was a loan. I want my money back. Don't come over here anymore. Take that, says Ivan. Here's your wife's letter to Yevgeny. I'm going to Simra. So he's been fooling around with Anna. And then Peter says, take that. And he shows Tatiana's letter to Yevgeny. He shows Ivan's wife's letter, and Yevgeny's going, why don't you take him? So that's a dig. That's a stab. That's a... In the meantime, these two other letters were, I love you, I love you. So this guy, we never see him. We never... one of the things I've told you about reading like this is to use the power of your imagination. We don't know what these people look like. We never know what they look like. You can cast anybody you want to look like this. But Yevgeny is the guy, right? He's the guy. There's, he's giving money away. He's got a lot of money to give away. In the meantime, he just cockles Ivan and Peter. You've been reading with Jimmy. Send me your emails. Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. We've been reading A Novel in 9 Letters by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Thanks so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed it. And again, go back and listen to me read the whole story again if you'd like. It's a good story.